Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Blog series. It's Saturday, April 19th, 2025, and on Saturdays, we tackle sports and humor, and hopefully a little bit of both today. And in a slightly unusual way, you'll see where we're going in a moment. But let's start with an important issue that people across the political spectrum have been discussing now for many years. That's the declining fertility rates in North American and European countries. And let's face it, if we've learned anything from history and the occasional Seinfeld episode, it's that shrinkage can be a real problem. No one really enjoys watching their societal populations shrink in size like a frightened turtle. We want our national populations to be proudly represented on the international stage, from the sheer size of our massive economies to our growing GDPs, to the medals won at the Olympics. And yes, many of you are in the competition too, directly or indirectly. Maybe not always at the national level, but who doesn't brag about having children, or perhaps then grandchildren if you're in my cohort? Many of our own friends, for example, have become grandparents, and they'll often brag about how many grandchildren they have, which is a bit frustrating, I have to say, for my wife and myself. How so? Well, many regular viewers will know that I've mentioned previously that we have 5 boys, all over the age of 29 as of July 2025, and yet we have 0 grandchildren. And the latest weather reports suggest that there's a 0% chance of any arriving in the next year. And that's despite the fact that all boys happen to have female partners. So, no grandchildren. All we have these days is one cat, Lucy. To paraphrase the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, we're just a couple of grandchildless cat ladies with miserable lives. Well, not all that miserable, but you see the point. Well, but rather than wallow in misery about the family decline in fertility rates, I've jumped into action. No, not that way. Besides, the taps have been turned off in my case, so there's really no point, if you know what I mean. No, I'm talking about instead, I've proposed giving a lump sum payment of $20,000 to each and every one of our sons upon the birth of a first, second, and even third child, the baby bonus. The Dr. J baby bonus in this case. And to sweeten the deal further, I'm also going to make sure that each one of their children can vote in elections, at least once they've graduated from senior kindergarten or passed a basic literacy test. So my thinking is that the combination of giving them both increased economic and political power should motivate them to start reproducing. And they darn well better hurry up because, well, in my case, the biological clock is ticking. No, not that way. In other words, I'd like to see some grandchildren, at least before my batteries run out. Okay, enough about me. Let's get back to the bigger picture, shall we? All right, so as most of you probably already know, to sustain a society's population at the same size and to avoid the shrinkage problem, birth rates have to achieve what's called the replacement level of 2.1. So that 2.1 figure represents the number of births per woman in society that are needed to keep a stable population size, and ensuring that she and her partner at least are replaced in time. The 0.1, of course, allows for some degree of childhood mortality. So what's the problem? Well, let's turn to the data. I love the data, the evidence, the facts. The World Factbook, in fact, lists 217 countries and dependencies or territories in their 2024 compendium. And guess how many are above replacement levels? Only 96 of 217, or about 44%. And how many of those 96 countries are on the mainland of Europe or North America? None. 0. Zip. Nada. Sure, you have the Faroe Islands, a territory of Denmark, with a fertility rate of 2.27, so they're above replacement, but they only have about 55,000 people, and you've probably never heard of them. but the highest European country rates are only 1.9 for Iceland and France, again, still below the replacement cutoff. But that's not new. And for decades, Europe's birth rates have been below the 2.1 replacement level. And in Canada and the US, as I mentioned previously, the rates have been under the replacement levels since the 1970s, and in fact down to about 1.3 in Canada and about 1.6 in the United States. So, what's the solution then to the shrinkage problem? Well, there's the conventional solution, and then there's the Dr. J solution. And I actually have two solutions, but I'm only going to be talking about one this week, and then I'll save one for next week. So first, let's look at the conventional solution, shall we? It basically boils down to simply encouraging people to have more babies. In fact, a growing number of people have embraced the pronatalism philosophy as a way of dealing with the crisis. So, pronatalism refers to the ideological belief that there should be more births and that governments should be offering incentives to encourage people to have more children. It's kind of like I'm doing with our boys. But pronatalism has been an increasingly prevalent view across the global north in particular, as governments everywhere have feared the potential socioeconomic impacts of below-level replacement rates. So there are concerns then that reduced population growth can lead to slower economic growth, even as a growing elderly population becomes more reliant upon taxpayer money. We all know about the tensions surrounding the solvency of Social Security and old age pensions. People are living longer than ever. We have a growing elderly population, and that is not commensurate with the growth in our workforces. And that's why also people are more and more working or planning to work beyond the conventional retirement age of 65. And so recently then, the threat of a global demographic crisis has been given even more fuel, due in part or especially because of one particularly prominent public figure, the richest man on earth and Father of the Year nominee, Elon Musk. Musk has been sounding the alarms for years about declining birth rates, claiming the human population is on the verge of collapse due to the number of people who are having smaller and smaller families. He stated that low birth rates present a, quote, much bigger risk to civilization than global warming, end quote. And being the noble humanitarian that he is, he's doing something about the crisis. Musk reportedly has fathered at least 14 children with at least 4 different women. Again, he's intent upon fighting the imminent civilizational collapse with what he expects or hopes to be his own genetically gifted offspring. According to a Wall Street Journal article, Musk is, quote, driven to correct the historic moment by helping seed the earth with more human beings of high intelligence, end quote. And, by the way, via C-sections, because as he's claimed on X, that allows for, quote, a larger brain. Now, speaking to an audience at an investment conference in Saudi Arabia last year, Musk stressed the urgency of the matter with a live video. And here's what he said in part. I think for most countries, they should view the birth rate as the single biggest problem they need to solve. If you don't make new humans, there's no humanity, and all the policies in the world don't matter, end quote. Profound advice. Thank you, Professor Musk. But it's not just Musk. The U.S. government now finally hopes to lead the charge as well to reverse their population shrinkage problem. How so? Well, starting in January 2025 with the new administration, and in his first speech as vice president at a March for Life rally in Washington, D.C., J.D. Vance admitted that he opposes abortion because, quote, he wants more babies in the United States of America. Sounds reasonable, right? And also, the newly confirmed Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, circulated an order instructing his department to, quote, give preference to communities with marriage and birth rates higher than the national average, end quote. That is, if they're in terms of awarding them with government contracts and grants. And then in February, Trump issued an executive order about expanding access to in vitro fertilization, IVF, with policy recommendations, quote, to protect IVF access and aggressively reduce out-of-pocket and health plan costs for such treatments. And Trump has stated that he supports IVF because he wants, quote, more babies, to put it very nicely, end quote. And then on March 26th, at a Women's History Month event at the White House, Trump stated that, he stated the following, and let me quote him at length here. Quote, "We're going to have tremendous goodies in the bag for women, too. The women, between the fertilization and all the other things that we're talking about, it's going to be great. Fertilization. I'm still very proud of it. I don't care. I'll be known as the fertilization president," end quote. So again, pretty powerful statement from the world's most powerful man. Trump, not Musk in this case. And then there's the Heritage Foundation. They recently published a plan to increase the U.S. birth rate. And in part, the plan involves defunding higher education, which tends to be much more dominated by women these days. Now, why is that a problem? Well, the research is clear. The number of children that a woman has in her lifetime is inversely correlated with the number of years she spends in education. And so with funding cuts, that might encourage women to reconsider their plans for education and careers. And the hope is that they might shift their focus then back to having babies. And again, it kind of makes sense. That's kind of what the Taliban was doing, trying to deny women education, hoping to ensure that by not pursuing higher education, that people like Malala and others would, just stay home and have more babies. And then, not to be outdone, in Europe, Hungary's Viktor Orban has been at the forefront as well to push for higher birth rates. In 2023, his government hosted the 5th Budapest Demographic Summit. And the summit included political leaders, religious evangelists, and high-profile academics, including conservative Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson, Italy's right-wing Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Serbian President Alexander Vučić, and Bulgarian President Rumen Radev. And then everyone, they had a wide selection of people and experts as well. They met for a couple of days to discuss how to get Europeans to make more babies. That was the essence of the conference. And here's the thing. They could have saved a lot of time and money if they just contacted Dr. J and listened to my solution. Actually, again, a couple of solutions. So my point in general is that it's really hard to do the social engineering and somehow just convince people in your country to start having more babies. I mean, if it were easy, we'd done that long ago, right? So we can learn, however, from history. So, for example, on December 16th, 1938, Adolf Hitler instituted the Gold Mother's Cross to encourage women of pure German origins to increase the size of their families and grow the population of the Third Reich. They need more babies. They started the encouragement early on. So when members of the League of German Girls, a wing of the Hitler Youth Movement, when they would turn 18, they became eligible for a branch called Faith and Beauty, which trained the girls then in the art of becoming ideal mothers. And one component of that ideal was fecundity. And so, each year, gold medals were awarded to women with 8 or more children. Gold medalists. Silver medals to women with 6 or 7 children, and then bronze medals were awarded to women with 5 children. Everybody else, didn't reach the podium. And therein lies the first Dr. J solution, potentially. Turn baby making into a competition or an Olympic sport. Okay? Now, that would have happened long ago if the men of our species could have babies. We'd be competing in, a dozen different ways if we were able to get pregnant and have the babies. And again, think of the whole anti-shrinkage messaging too, right? A real man has babies, big, bold, beautiful, intelligent babies, like Elon Musk. Well, in fact, while he was canvassing for Trump before the last election in Pennsylvania, Musk sent a series of texts about the urgency of winning that particular state. And this is what he wrote. Quote, "In all of history, there has never been a competitive army composed of women. Not even once," he wrote. "Men are made for war. Real men, anyway. I am in full war mode. Going to the front lines today. Must win Pennsylvania." Right? I guess that was his kind of Gettysburg Address of sorts. Well, in effect, we're in a war, people. All right, make no mistake about it. A fight to save humanity. We must get behind our brave leaders like Trump and Musk, Vance and Orban. Real men must deliver, must step up, must be on the front lines, and must come for our rescue, or come to our rescue. Okay? So, let's start then by bestowing medals upon the true heroes of our civilizations, led by 5-star General Musk. Let's exalt Nick Cannon for his 12 children, and Evander Holyfield for creating 11 children. Posthumously, what about Charlie Chaplin? He should be eulogized for having 11 children. And Marlon Brando, too, with at least 11 kids. Some estimate as many as 16. Distinguished service medals should be given as well to Eddie Murphy, with 10 offspring, Mel Gibson, with 9 children, and both Clint Eastwood and Alec Baldwin, with 8 kids. All of these guys then would be eligible under the Third Reich for what they might have called then, as an homage to the Gold Mother's Cross, maybe the Gold Father's Cross, for their service. So they'd all be getting gold medals. Kevin Costner and Brad Pitt could earn silver medals with 7 and 6 kids, respectively. Spielberg has 6 kids, too. Heck, even Bill Cosby would get a bronze medal with 5 kids. That's a bit awkward. Hey, by the way, I get a bronze medal, too, I think. I have 5 kids, 2 of my own and 3 stepchildren. I'll have to check with Vice President Vance to see if the 3 stepkids count, but I think I've got 5. So, solution number 1 then basically involves turning baby making into a competition, but mainly as a male sport because of our natural abilities, to fight wars, but as well as our tendency to focus on winning the size game and our embarrassment over the shrinkage issue. So women, I hope you'll be willing to be good sports and play along with us. Even better, you don't just have to cheer from the sidelines. You can actually get in the game too. We could have different divisions or events within the sport, like track and field. So for example, we could have the most babies exclusively with the same biological mother between Olympiads. That could be an event. We could have the most adopted children from foreign countries event. We could have an event that looks at the total birth weight of all the children sired between Olympiads, or the total length of all the children sired. So again, the more the merrier, the longer the better, right? Again, we love to talk about size. And of course, there's everyone's favorite event, I would think at least, the total number of children sired by different partners between Olympiads. And so that would be the real crowd pleaser, I think. You'd have all these guys competing to have as many babies as possible, ideally several born each year, maybe even in the same month, and by different mothers. It'd be the equivalence of the decathlon, I think, right? And the decathlete winner would not only get the gold medal, but then probably all kinds of commercial endorsements and likely end up on the cover of Wheaties box at some point as well. Now, to be fair, we could also have a female division, okay? Just like we have, similar categories, and we do the same thing, right? We have men's and women's curling, men's and women's track and field, and so on. So for women, again, you could have the total number of babies by the same man between Olympiads. That could be an event. And unlike conventional sports, you could actually spice things up by encouraging doping or the use of fertility drugs like clomiphene to increase the odds of multiple births. Yeah, that might make it a little more exciting too. Right? And so for women, again, you could have the total number of babies born by the same man or to the same man between Olympiads. And again, if anything, you could look at it in terms of the total number of multiple births that they might have. Okay? One of my favorites, though, I think would be the equivalence of the kind of the 100-meter dash, right? A sprint competition, if you will, for the women. And that would be the fastest time between two separate births by the same woman, right? So in other words, who can get pregnant again the fastest after delivering a healthy baby, or even an unhealthy baby? What the heck? Doesn't matter. Just how quickly can you get pregnant again and deliver? So again, that would be my sprinting event. And of course, again, there'd still be the crowd favorite as well, where women could also compete to see how many children that they could have by how many different fathers as well between Olympiads. And there are so many other events too, right? You could have competitions surrounding IVF, a whole bunch of other categories around different kinds of genetic testing. The possibilities are virtually endless, okay? And so that's solution number one. Sure, you can have your government incentives and the baby bonuses and all that stuff. But if you really want to increase the number of births and babies, turn the whole thing into a major international sporting event. Line up the corporate sponsors. Get the massive TV and cable deals in place. Soon enough, you'll be promoting all of the baby-making stars, the heroes of popular cultures, the savers of Western civilization. And they'd get the fame and the wealth and all that accompanies the top performers in any sport. And I think, to really bring this home, what we need to do is simply have the birthing Olympics on a regular fixed interval, like maybe every 5 years in conjunction with the Canadian census, for example. That might be a good way to time it. Or from the US, maybe you'd prefer a 10-year cycle, right? So you'd have the birthing Olympics every 10 years to compare what happened the previous decade. And again, that could be aligned with the US census, which is taken every 10 years. You see? So again, we'd be accomplishing two things at once, and that's a really efficient use of resources. Just my suggestion. Okay, well, I'm out of time today, but I have one more Dr. J solution on the fertility crisis that I'll be sharing next Saturday. And I think it's even better than the baby Olympics, the birthing Olympics. I'll bet you're curious to find out, aren't you? Well, you'll have to stay tuned and tune back in, I should say, next Saturday, if not before. So until then, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, dole out hugs in abundance, and heck, see if you might be inclined to reproduce, for the good of the team. We all have to make sacrifices. Bye for now.